Hello and good evening. Thanks for being with us. I'm Lindsay Granger in for Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. Let's go back to President Trump, who's speaking now on artificial intelligence.
Who spent their time focused on building up foreign nations. Under the Trump administration, we are going to have leaders who are going to build up our nation. This colossal investment in AI infrastructure and many other industries, for that matter, such as automobiles and so many other things, will also create thousands and thousands of great-paying jobs, the kind of jobs we want, including lots of blue-collar jobs. And, you know, our numbers are very good right now, but wait till you see these numbers in 2 years from now. It will mean higher wages and more opportunity for millions of energy workers, HVAC technicians, engineers, electricians, and the hardworking citizens who make our country run. These are great people that make our country actually run. To ensure America maintains the world-class infrastructure we need to win today, I will sign a sweeping executive order to fast-track federal permitting, streamline reviews, and do everything possible to expedite construction of all major AI infrastructure projects. And this will be done. You will get so good a service in so many ways, not only from Lee with the environment, but you need many other types of permits, and you're going to go so fast. You're going to say, well, wait a minute, this is too fast. I didn't expect to go this quickly. This is a problem. I may cause a problem in opposite, but including factories, data centers, and power plants of all kinds, the United States will have total industrial and technological supremacy. The second pillar of our action plan for AI dominance is to get the entire world running on the backbone of American technology, and I think that's very much happening right now, and I think it's going to happen. The last administration was obsessed with imposing restrictions on AI, including extreme restrictions on its exports. As you know, they made it very difficult to export. This alienated American partners and drove even our friends into the arms of China and other countries. That's why upon taking office, I repealed the so-called Biden diffusion rule. Can you imagine that? That crippled American AI exports, the Biden diffusion rule. I wonder who came up with that name, because he has no idea what it is. He had no idea what it was. He came up with a rule. I wonder who drew that one. I wonder, was that signed by the AutoPen, I think, because they went to him and said, we're going to do a diffusion rule. Mr. President, what? It's okay. The AutoPen will take care of it. It's one of the greatest scandals in the history of our country, let me tell you. Under my administration, we will maintain necessary protections for our national security, but we will never forget that the greatest threat of all is to forfeit the race and force our partners into rival technology. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. Okay? Not going to let that happen. That could be the end. When I traveled to the Middle East in May, every leader I met was thrilled to do business with American tech firms and with America, and they were all thrilled to meet me, believe it or not. It's hard to believe, isn't it? But they were. By the way, most powerful woman in the world is here today. Susie Wiles, stand up, please. Susie Wiles, Chief of Staff. She can take out a country with a mere phone call. No, they just voted her the most powerful woman anywhere in the world. She might be the most powerful person in the world, I think. But she's done hasn't she done a good job, though, huh? Good. But we're going to come home with trillions and trillions of dollars in deals, and that's the way it is. But the King of Saudi Arabia met three great leaders. I went to three countries predominantly. King of Saudi Arabia said, and I can say that Qatar and UAE, the leaders, brilliant guys, great people, they said the same thing. They said, you know what, that 1 year ago, your country was dead. It was a dead country. They were looking at China, they were looking at other places, but you had a dead country. And today, Mr. President, you have the hottest country anywhere in the world. They said that, and they meant it so strongly. And when I went to NATO 2 weeks ago, where we made the deal where they pay 5% instead of 2%, they said the same exact thing. They said, boy, I tell you what a difference it is. It's a year ago, you people were dead. We didn't think you were going to make it as a country. Today, you're the hottest country in the world. They all said it. All those leaders said it, 30 of them. So today I'm signing another major executive order that will turn America into an AI export powerhouse. Under this order, Secretary Lutnick and Secretary Marco Rubio's doing a great job as Secretary of State, will work to rapidly expand American AI exports of all kinds, from chips to software to data storage of all kinds. And that's very important. That's going to give you the freedom to do what you want to do. And third, once and for all, we are getting rid of woke. Is that okay? Because I know you had to hire all woke people. I heard you had to hire all woke people under some of these things. How about the chips, where they give you the chip nonsense, where they give you billions of dollars if you only build a chip company? These people have plenty of money. They don't need the money. They need the permits. They need the rights to do it. They don't want to pay tariffs, so they come and they build here. That's why they're coming here. Number one, they like me, but they like not having to pay tariffs even more. And they're coming. But Biden gave billions of dollars to companies that have nothing but cash. And they don't say where to build. It's just give them money. But here's the problem. They have to hire lots of woke people. And they say woke isn't for this particular industry. We've noticed that. They're not for a lot of industries, if you want to know the truth. So the guidelines were impossible. They're going to give you money, but you got to hire this and this and this and that. And I don't want to get into it too much because I don't want any controversy today. But you have to hire a lot of people that were not into this particular world that you're in. And so therefore, all the money they gave didn't mean a damn thing. One of Biden's worst executive orders established toxic diversity, equity, and inclusion ideology as a guiding principle of American AI development. So you immediately knew that was the end of your development. But the American people do not want woke Marxist lunacy in the AI models, and neither do other countries. They don't want it. They don't want anything to do with it. That's why on day one, I very proudly terminated Joe Biden's order on woke AI, effective immediately. You don't have any of those crazy rules. Crazy rules. And in just a moment, I will be signing an order banning the federal government from procuring AI technology that has been infused with partisan bias or ideological agendas such as critical race theory, which is ridiculous. And from now on, the U.S. government will deal only with AI that pursues truth, fairness, and strict impartiality. We're not going to go through the craziness that we've gone through for the last 4 years. And then we skip 4, and then you go back, and it started then. But it hung around a little while. Now it's not hanging around at all. Now it's actually very uncool, as somebody told me the other day. It's so uncool to be woke. I encourage all American companies to join us in rejecting poisonous Marxism in our technology. It'll be very interesting to see what's happening in New York, because they're actually thinking about electing a communist in New York. They like to call him a socialist. He's not a socialist. He's a communist. But don't worry, you're going to be okay. He still has to get his money from the White House, and that's not going to happen until he shapes up. But as an example, we are not going to allow men to play in women's sports. That's an example. That's one. And they say that's an 80-20 number. They say 80% would be against it. No, it's not 80-20. It's about 97-3. And I don't know who the 3 are. I've never seen anybody. I've never had a person. I've seen everybody. I'm a very open person. They come up to me and they talk to me. I've never had anybody come up, sir, you have to let men play in women's sports. I've never had it. I deal with hundreds of thousands of people. Every time I talk to somebody, they talk about AI, they talk about everything, but they've never said, you got to allow, this is ridiculous. Men should be allowed to play in women's sports. It's sort of crazy, isn't it, huh? You have to see, did you see the race? It was a race, a long distance marathon, one of those all day deals. And we had one of the great female runners and we had one of the great male runners. And at the end of the day, he won the race by 5 hours and 14 seconds. They waited around for the really good athlete female. It's very demeaning to women, I want to tell you that. But they waited, her parents were waiting for hours. Somebody said, why don't you go back to the hotel and sleep for a few hours and come back and meet your daughter? This is what they do. You got to see the weightlifting records, though. They're the best of all. A woman lifted 212 pounds. It was a world record. It held for 18 years. And now a man who transitioned came up and looked at the bar. How much is it? 212 pounds. Oh, let me try it. Bing, bong. I think he broke the record by 109 pounds. It's going to be a long time. It's going to be a long time before a woman catches that. And these are great athletes and great people, and it's demeaning. And who the hell wants this? We're off of that whole standard, because I just tell you those as examples. We're off of it. The reason the last administration was so eager to regulate and restrict AI was so they could limit this technology to just a few large companies, allowing them to centralize it, censor it, control it, weaponize it. And they would weaponize it. A very dishonest group of people. You probably saw that because we caught them in the act. We really caught them. We had it before, but now we really have them. We have it where it counts. But this is the exact opposite of my approach. The unique strength of the American tech industry has always come from its startups and small tech. It comes through small. Jensen was small. Were you ever small? I think so. When you started in your bedroom, I think you were small, right? He started as very small, and now he's really become very amazing. If you regulate them too much, you kill the source of American genius and technological power. I believe that. Joe Biden had a plan to lose the AI race. I think he wanted to lose it because his plan would never have worked. It would have never been successful. You would have spent a lot of money and you wouldn't have been able to win. They didn't allow you to win, but we have a plan which only admires and respects the winners. Every citizen should take incredible pride in the inspiring feats of American innovators who are pushing the bounds of human knowledge and achievement. The people of OpenAI, Google, Meta, and countless startups are proving once again that America is impossible. You are just impossible to beat. You're not going to be beaten. We're not going to let that happen. When you do your best, when you work your hardest, and when you're allowed to be free of horrible, foolish regulation. And you're going to have regulation, but it's going to be sensible, smart regulation. There's nobody who's going to beat you. As we push even further into this exciting frontier, let us never forget that all of this prosperity and progress has come from the culture of freedom and hard work, merit, ambition, and risk-taking passed down from one generation of Americans to the next. Silicon Valley rose to wealth, fame, and glory by exemplifying these values, and it will win this race not by rejecting them, but by embracing them like they have never been embraced before. We must put America first. This is a nation that invented the light bulb, the telegraph, the television, the telephone, the computer chip, the smartphone, the GPS, the integrated circuit, and even the internet. Basically, we invented everything. What is left? We invented everything. And now it's AI. We invented everything. Does anyone have anything else to say? And now we're going to take it to a new level. But Americans were the first to fly a plane, first to harness the atom, and first to plant our flag on the moon. We mastered the industrial age, we created the digital age, and now we are leading the world into the golden age, indeed, the golden age of America. With your help, that golden age will be built by American workers. It will be powered by American energy. It will be run on American technology, improved by American artificial intelligence, and it will make America richer, stronger, greater, freer, and more powerful than ever before. And I will now do my share by going and signing a name without an auto pen. I will sign it. If we had one, I wouldn't use it anyway, but we will sign it auto pen free, and we will say, Donald J. Trump, God bless America, and God bless you, and good luck, because the race has just begun, and you're going to win it. Thank you very much, everybody.
That was President Trump speaking and answering questions at an AI summit where the administration unveiled an AI action plan. It's aimed at making the U.S. dominant in the field of artificial intelligence. But there were two very different stories driving the narrative in Washington tonight. At the White House, President Trump's administration was on the attack, accusing former President Obama of treason and tying him to Russia in the 2016 election. Trump's former director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, making a surprise appearance at the briefing room earlier today to release documents claiming Obama tried to fabricate the idea of Russian interference in the 2016 election. The president is also facing tons of questions tonight about the Jeffrey Epstein files. The Wall Street Journal is reporting tonight that the Justice Department told President Trump in May that his name is among many in the Epstein files. It's not clear what context Trump's name appeared in the files. FBI Director Kash Patel is calling the report, quote, fake news. This comes after a judge declined the DOJ's request to unseal a set of Epstein grand jury transcripts in Florida. We are going from here now to lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. The Democratic Congressman Ami Bera of California joins me in a moment. But first, Republican Congressman Corey Mills of Florida. Corey, thanks so much for joining me. I want to talk to you a little bit about what this all is. Is it like look over here and kind of don't pay attention to what's going on with Epstein when we talk about Tulsi Gabbard joining the briefing room today and bringing back up Russia and 2016 and calling this a hoax to look into and even using the words treason?
Well, no. I mean, look, Republicans can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can actually go ahead and chase leads on the Russian collusion hoax, which has now been declassified, that Tulsi Gabbard has found that actually does show that President Obama, his administration, but also Joe Biden has been culprits in trying to weaponize our government in an effort to not only influence operations to interfere in elections, but also to go ahead and wrongly accuse people with false intelligent leaks. And so I think that that's something that's very important when we talked about the weaponization in the 118th Congress. We actually had to vote and create a special subcommittee for the weaponization of federal government that Jim Jordan, the chairman of Judiciary, led, so that we can continue to look into these things. Now, when it comes to the Epstein file, I think it's very clear. I signed on to a bill that is actually a discharge petition by Thomas Massie that would allow for it to be completely exposed and transparent to the American people, but not injuring or hurting those or doxing those who are actually victims of this sexual predatory manner of Epstein Island, or actually help those to continue their investigations to move forward. But I find it odd that the Wall Street Journal, of all people, is trying to claim that they have word that President Trump is on one of these lists. Meanwhile, if these are classified documents that Congress hasn't even seen, I find it very highly improbable that the Wall Street Journal, who is part of the fake media propaganda that's been utilized since, I don't know, the modernization 2012 Smith-Mundt Act, somehow has this classified information that not even members of Congress or the Senate has.
So, Representative Mills, I want to pull up a poll. I'm looking at how Republicans are viewing Trump's handling of the Epstein files. 40% approve, 36% disapprove, and 24% are unsure. This is an issue that many say the deep MAGA movement is anti or against the way it's being handled. So what is your response to say that there's a large faction of the party that's uncomfortable with how it's being handled across the board from leadership?
Well, while it's great that I see your poll, it's also important to note that this is a bipartisan issue where no one wants to see women and children being sexually exploited, trafficked, or in some way having this predatory manner. And so I think that it's a universal thing that we want those who have actually committed these types of crimes to be held accountable. I think the issue that we find here is that if we were to utilize someone like Ghislaine Maxwell as an example, who's currently incarcerated, who holds the actual jurisdiction for further investigation? Is it the FBI? Is it the Department of Justice as a whole? Is it one of the actual committees or subcommittees like Judiciary, like Oversight? So I think there's a problem, one, with finding out who actually holds the jurisdiction of this, but also just bear in mind that there was a lot of things that had been destroyed. And if President Trump was actually on these lists, as the Wall Street Journal claims, you don't think that the Obama administration in their 4 years in office would have utilized that in the campaign? Of course they would have. So that just follows further credence to the fact that it's a lot of fake media and a lot of wrongful reporting. But yes, I am one of those members of 20 plus that signed on with Thomas Massie's bill to go ahead and be transparent to the American people, provide what is out there, but making sure we protect the victims.
And quickly, because we're running out of time, what do you think this meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell was all about? What was the end goal there with the DOJ?
Well, I think that it's continuing to get further information to make sure the president's properly briefed. I mean, this isn't something that's abnormal. This actually happens with all cabinet members on a morning and daily basis, whether it's the Secretary of State talking about geopolitical or bilateral, trilateral issues, looking at different conflicts like the India-Pakistan conflict or the Iran-Israel conflict or the current situation in Syria, whether it's the Department of Defense to talk about weapon upgrades, modifications, the Golden Dome, troop movement, or recruitment. I mean, this is not something that's abnormal for a Department of Justice or an AG or ODNI or John Ratcliffe as the CIA director to brief the president every single morning on what's going on and what's continuing to be leaked.
Congressman Corey Mills, thank you.
Thank you.
Here now, Democratic California Congressman Ami Bera, a member of the House Select Committee on Intelligence. Ami, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
So I just want to ask you, do you think this is a little bit of political theater from Democrats? Because there wasn't that much interest in these Epstein files, let's say a year ago, a few months ago. So why now?
Like, we're not the ones that raised the Epstein issue. Donald Trump raised it on the campaign trail. You know, many members of Congress raised this as a real issue. And now President Trump's trying to set that aside. I agree with my colleague from Florida. You know, the best way to put this to an end is just release the files, let the public see, and do what you said you were going to do on the campaign trail. I think he's prolonging this. And yes, of course, we're going to push to see a full release, because now with those protests, we feel like he's hiding something. Again, Rupert Murdoch is a pretty cautious individual. I doubt the Wall Street Journal would be saying his name's in this report unless his name was in this report. Again, that doesn't implicate him in any type of crime. But the best way to put the end to this is release the files. Let the public look at it, and let's move past this. We've got other things to work on.
So are you suggesting that there's a fear from the Republican leadership in what might be in the files in connection to President Trump?
Well, I think there's a fear from President Trump, because he's made a 180-degree about-face on saying, oh, there's nothing here, after spending years talking about cover-up and conspiracy. He now looks like the one who's covering up and conspiring to protect the elites here. So, yeah, we are going to go after him to release the files, because that's what they demanded. So, you know, release them. What are you trying to hide? And, again, I do think he's trying to hide something.
And you're very keen on transparency and talk about how important it is. So if we're talking about transparency, then is what Tulsi Gabbard is doing right now in Congress wrong? And is what she's going after, connecting former President Obama to Russia and saying that this was considered possibly treason, is that going too far if she's looking into it in the name of transparency?
I mean, I think this is a sideshow. Treason is an incredibly hard word to use against the former president. If they're going to go down this path, then let's have open hearings. Let's look at all the information. But again, my sense at this point is there's nothing to see here, that they're trying to create a distraction. But if there is something there, then great, let's look at this. Again, I'm not sure why they wouldn't have gone down this path when President Trump was in office the first time.
Congressman Ami Bera, thank you so much.
Thank you. Be well.
Coming up, more fallout after the shooting of an off-duty Border Patrol agent in New York, how it's leading to changes in sanctuary cities. And he's rising star. He's that rising star in politics. More support rolling in for Zoran Mandani as he runs for New York City mayor. What his victory could mean for the Democratic Party. Stay with us. We'll be right back. To the Hill, I'm Lindsay Granger in for Blake Berman. Tonight, 243 illegal migrants are under arrest in the Denver metro area. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement conducting an operation from July 12th through July 20th. Among those arrested are members of the violent Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. This is the latest series of arrests as the attacks against immigration officials are escalating. Most recently, an off-duty U.S. Customs and Border Protection officer is now recovering in the hospital after being shot in the face by an illegal immigrant in New York. This comes as states and cities are now reevaluating their policies. For example, the city of Louisville is dropping its sanctuary city policies after receiving a stark warning from the DOJ. Louisville Mayor Craig Greenberg called the change critical. Take a look.
Louisville will no longer be considered a sanctuary city by the federal government. This change in designation is critical. Cities on the sanctuary cities list right now are experiencing a terrifying increase in raids by ICE.
We are going to hear from both sides. Ron Vitiello, Senior Advisor for U.S. Customs and Border Protection, joins me in a moment. But first, with me now is the Democratic Mayor of Denver, Mike Johnston. Mike Johnston, Denver Mayor, thank you so much for taking the time out to join me today.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
So I want to ask you, you reject the term sanctuary city. It's not something that you describe Denver as. Why do you take that stance, and do you think other mayors and leaders should follow across the country?
Next, I think it's a false term. We do not harbor people from law enforcement. We do not shelter people from the law. In fact, if people have broken criminal law in Denver, we arrest them and work together with federal agencies to hold them accountable. And so that's not what we do. However, we do, if folks arrive in the city on a bus sent from Texas in the middle of the night with no shoes or no warm clothing, we will get them access to housing and shelter, help them get a job and support themselves. So we are a welcoming city, but we are very active about charging people with crimes when they've committed crimes and holding people accountable to do that. But for us, that's different than being a place that's going to welcome women and children who are fleeing countries with socialist dictatorships trying to run them out.
And that number I mentioned earlier, it's pretty high. 243 migrants have been arrested in the Denver metro area. What do you have to say to that? And are you working with ICE on some of these arrests?
So we approach this a little differently than some cities do. We do work with ICE on folks where there are criminal warrants. So if there is someone that's committed a violent crime, we want to arrest them and get them off the streets as much as anyone else does. And so if we have someone in our custody that's committed a violent crime and ICE notifies us that they want custody of them, we will let them know when we're releasing those individuals and they can pick them up. What we don't do is do ICE's job for them on federal immigration enforcement of a status offense. If someone crossed the paper without borders or overstayed a visa and they have not committed any violent crimes, that is not what we're going to spend our officer time to enforce. That is a federal priority with federal enforcement. We don't do that. And we don't, as a matter of course, ask people's immigration status when they come in for a city service. If you come to a hospital, we're not going to ask for your immigration status. If you come to a school or to a church, we don't ask that question. Or if we stop you for a speeding ticket, that's not relevant to the charge. So we don't ask that information. But if ICE needs access to folks and they have criminal warrants for them, we will partner with them. We think that's common sense.
Now, you had your State of the City address earlier this week. You talked about many things, including homelessness and multiple issues, but you did touch on immigration, saying that this is a federal issue. Talk to me about what your messaging was to the Denver community and even those responsible in Aurora, like Mayor Jurenski and people that are around, or Councilwoman Jurenski, that are criticizing some of the policies.
Yeah, I think what we've made clear is there's a myth that somehow cities that have received migrants or have been welcoming have had challenges with homelessness and with crime. What we made clear is actually Denver received the largest number of migrants per capita of any that got bused to us from Texas. And in that same 2-year period, we have reduced street homelessness in Denver more than any city in American history. We've dropped it by 45% in just 2 years. We've dropped the homicide rate in Denver by 58%. That's more than any of the top 50 cities in the country over the last year. So crime is historically down, homelessness is historically down, and those folks that have arrived, we connected them to services, we put them to work, they're paying taxes, paying the bills, supporting themselves. That's how we think it's supposed to work, and that's how it's worked for us.
And Mayor Johnston, I know you have to go, but quickly, are you uncomfortable or feeling any ways that Denver could be the next target, like LA is perceived to be by some Democrats, for immigration crackdown in ways that you obviously wouldn't support?
No, we don't, because there are also certain things we're not going to tolerate. We're not going to have folks lighting police cars on fire, or attacking public buildings, or breaking windows of our small businesses. There's nothing civilly disobedient about that. It's just disruptive and does damage to the cause of hardworking newcomers who are trying to make their way. The last thing they want is someone breaking the law on their behalf. So we have peaceful protests. We support it. We've had more than 200 peaceful protests in the city. We allow that. We don't allow criminal behavior. But also, I think more importantly, we found a way to resolve this situation. This crisis has really been resolved in Denver for more than a year. We had the last arrivals in about June of 2024. So there is no crisis in the streets of Denver now. We've moved on, and so there's no reason for us to worry or need any sort of federal involvement because we've solved this problem.
Denver Mayor Mike Johnston, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now with me is Ron Vitiello, Senior Advisor for the U.S. Customs and Border Protection and former Chief of the U.S. Border Patrol. So, Ron, tell me a little bit about your specific strategy and what you think about flooding the zone. What happened, it was unfortunate in New York. Obviously, we want to protect American lives. So what do you say in response to some of the conversation that we just had with the mayor?
Well, I would just point out that an arrest for an immigration violation, whether it's in Denver or whether it's at the border, a warrant is not required. And so when we talk about locations where somebody's in the country illegally and they get arrested by that local jurisdiction for a crime that they committed against the citizens, in this case, Denver. They're in the country illegally, and ICE can file a detainer on those individuals, and we want those people turned over to ICE when they're done with their whatever the case is in Denver or any of the other jurisdictions. So harboring people who are in the country illegal who also commit other crimes is a destructive policy for the citizens that live in those cities.
So what do you think, that other mayors should cooperate, or do you think the DOJ and Trump's administration should continue to move forward in ways that they're comfortable if people don't cooperate and almost threaten them in ways like Louisville? Is that the appropriate strategy?
Well, the rule of law should prevail, and so if people are in the country illegally and there's a method for them to be arrested and removed, cities should help us with that. So we're grateful that the secretary went out and extended the hand of leadership and said, we want to work with you, and we're glad that Louisville has changed their mind and now can get right with the law as it relates to helping ICE do their job and making those arrests, instead of at street corners or in businesses, in the jail itself.
And now studies and critics will look at some of the numbers and say the people that are in jail are usually in jail, a large majority, because they crossed the border illegally, as opposed to doing violent acts and crime. And sometimes that differentiation might not be made by allowing ICE to immediately go into some of these detention centers. What's your response?
It's a distinction without a difference. It's illegal to cross the border without being invited, without being inspected, or to be in the United States without that status. It is a federal crime. It's also against the immigration statutes in the United States. So there's not a difference between people who commit crimes and people who don't commit crimes. And there are 8 million people on the non-detained docket in the United States, and so they're waiting or they're in process. And there's hundreds of thousands of people who have already gone through the due process and are in the country after being ordered removed. And so there are going to be people who are in the country illegally that are going to find themselves in detention. ICE goes after the worst of the worst. They prioritize what they do. But when they find other people who are out of status along with the targets that they're going after, they'll be arrested as well.
Now, there are layers to this. Obviously, we can't get every single illegal migrant out of the country, right? That's going to be a hard task to do. And so everyone, or a large majority, studies showed of the country were on board with removing the criminals first. A lot of people feel mixed reviews about how President Trump is going about it for removing all people. And then there are business leaders that are like, we hire migrants to work throughout our businesses, including President Trump himself in the past. So how do you manage all those thoughts and then still have a policy that resonates and translates and is effective?
We're going to meet the mandate that the president has given us and what the voters gave him. He said he was going to secure the border and make America safe again. That starts with locking down the border, which CBP has done a really good job with. It's very hard to cross the border right now. If you try to cross, you will get caught. You will most likely will be prosecuted and you will be removed quickly. So that part of it is going well. That's why it's important to do the interior operations as well, because when people do get sent home, it's going to be very hard for them to come back. And so, yeah, we're going to ICE is going to scale up. That's what the bill is about. We're going to scale capabilities at the border as well, and we're going to continue to meet the mandate that the president ran on and the voters asked for.
Ron Vitiello, thank you so much.
Thank you.
There's so much more ahead still here on the Hill, including Zoran Mandani, the Socialist Democrat, gathering more endorsements as he runs for New York City mayor. Who's supporting him? And is he starting to win the party over? And what Melania Trump might have in common with former President John F. Kennedy. The full panel joins me after the break. Welcome back to The Hill. I'm Lindsey Granger, in for Blake Berman. There's no doubt that in winning the White House in 2016, Donald Trump changed the face of the Republican Party. But 9 years later, is this the new face of the Democratic Party? 33-year-old self-proclaimed Democratic socialist Zoran Mamdani may be expanding the far left's influence way past just the New York City area, where he is currently the favorite to win the election for mayor of the biggest city in the country in November. But since his stunning victory in the Democratic primary, Mamdani has been racking up the endorsements, including but not limited to Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Jerry Nadler, and more in the past few days. And it's not just left-leaning politicians showing their support. According to a recent poll, Mamdani is currently at a +9 when it comes to his favorability. Mamdani says he represents the future, while President Trump does not share the apparent enthusiasm.
Freezing the rent for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants, making the slowest buses in the country fast and free, and delivering universal child care.
This guy is a communist at the highest level. We don't need a communist in this country.
Full panel with me, Mick Mulvaney, former chief of staff in the first Trump White House, Niall Stanage, White House columnist for The Hill, Julia Manchester, national political reporter for The Hill, and Dan Cannonen, former Battleground States director for the Biden and Harris campaigns. Okay, so what do we make of Mamdani? I'll start with you, Dan, because you see that the party has been called by many people to kind of have a direction. Is Mamdani that direction?
He's interesting at the moment because he ran a campaign focused on cost and a campaign that cut through on social media. And I think there are lessons Democrats can learn and should learn from that. But I'll just point out, Lindsay, that in the primaries in Virginia for governor and in New Jersey for governor, moderates came through, Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey and Abigail Spanberger in Virginia. And in 2018, moderates won to bring the Democrats back in the House control, including people like Alyssa Slotkin and Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill. It was not AOC, after beating Joe Crowley, that told the story of the Democrats' 2018 victories. It was really the moderates that propelled us. So he's interesting now because there is not a national figure that can lead the party. Also, Trump, I think, has an interest in sort of making him the boogeyman, and he's trying to do that. But this is not necessarily where we go overall in policy.
So, Mick, is he playing right into that boogeyman narrative using the words democratic socialist? I know Republicans are like cheering to hear this out loud and somebody scream it from rooftops.
There was a famous newspaper cover back in the early 2000s, I think, when Howard Dean was doing very well in the Democrat primary for president. And it was a right-leaning paper, and it said, the front cover was, please nominate this man. Yes, I want all the Mandani I can possibly get as a Republican. There's no question about it. What's fascinating to me, though, Lindsay, is the Democrats who have rallied to his side. It's been very different than Donald Trump. Donald Trump didn't get any Republicans on his side, and I think the Democrats have learned a lesson. If you see a parallel between Mandami's rise and Trump's rise, and now the Democrats are falling over themselves to support Mandami because they realize that the guys who went up against Trump, the Bushes, the Romneys, the Cheneys, they're out of politics right now. So I think at least Democrats do see this as sort of where the energy is and where the wave is.
Now, Niall, I know you're following this whole thing, and so you're seeing probably all the conversations happening across the rebrand of the Democratic Party, Project 2029 and everything else. How does Mamdani fall within those parameters in any way?
Well, for one thing, I think we'd be wrong to nationalise Mamdani's appeal too much. The appeal to voters in New York City is very different from the appeal to voters in central Pennsylvania or Ohio or anywhere like that. Also, I'm going to end up defending the left, which doesn't happen too much around here, but why not? In terms of economic left-wing policies, those are much more popular than the media tends to relay. Increasing the minimum wage, paid family leave, government should ensure health insurance for everyone. Those are extremely popular proposals. It gets more complicated when you get into sort of cultural leftism, so-called identitarian politics. Right. But what he's proposing is not bad things.
So Mamdani has been called, some people don't call him a socialist, they call him emotionalist, I think, because he's peaked on the emotions. He talked about like freeing up childcare as the mom of a 4-year-old. That's something that might cause all parents to look his way. What do you think it is that's so appealing specifically for New Yorkers?
Look, to Dan's point, Mamdani is a really good messenger. He's a good communicator in the same way. Well, maybe not in the same way, but oftentimes you'll hear Democrats say Donald Trump is a very good political communicator. He's a very good messenger. So I think you're seeing Democrats really pick that up from Mamdani. That being said, though, I don't think Mandani is emblematic of all Democrats, and I think a lot of Democrats are actually sort of distancing themselves from him. I think we need to pay attention not only to the New York City mayoral elections in November, but also in New Jersey and Virginia, as Dan said. I think that's going to be more emblematic of where we see the party going next year. I think New York City is very much its own microcosm. In fact, you don't even have to go far outside of New York City to see that there are Democrats that aren't necessarily aligning themselves with Mamdani. You have Tom Suozzi, for example, Laura Gillen. They're two they're in toss-up seats or competitive House districts in the greater New York area, and they're not falling over themselves to get with Mamdani. So I think there definitely are there's a separation there.
I want to play a soundbite for you guys. President Trump had some comments about Mamdani. Let's take a listen.
They're actually thinking about electing a communist in New York. They like to call him a socialist. He's not a socialist. He's a communist. But don't worry, you're going to be okay. He still has to get his money from the White House, and that's not going to happen until he shapes up.
Let's kind of go around the horn and give some reactions to that.
Well, look, he's trying to do this thing where he's making him a boogeyman, as I said, but I want to pick up on something Niall said about the policies and the popularity of some of the economic approaches from Mandani, which Trump should probably listen to. It's no longer the case, at least with many voters in this country, that it's left versus right. It is up versus down, inside versus outside. And if you're talking about lowering costs and focusing on family issues, as Mandani is, much in the way that Trump did in the campaign and focused on cost, that works a lot of the folks that Trump won over, people he's losing right now.
But quickly, is Mandani the face of the working liberal wing of the party?
But to a degree he is. I mean, he's somebody who I think has energized young progressives in particular, given people something to rally around, rather than the criticism of the centre-left, which is often that it ends up in Republican-light positions and doesn't draw people to it with any great degree of magnetism or charisma.
So was Mandani the response to President Trump? Will he make his way into national politics?
I think he's where the energy is in the party for sure. We'll see how he does. I want him to win. I do. I think it's part of the great American experiment. Fine, well, let's try a little communism. Let's see if it works, and then we can, and then we can take that to the next level.
Okay, well, now it's time for a segment called What's Trending, where we watch and catch you guys up on stories that are trending on thehill.com. First one, Tulsi Gabbard details Obama-related intel findings at White House press briefing. Trump's director of national intelligence suggesting today that key findings from an Intel Committee report from 2020 could implicate former President Obama regarding an alleged conspiracy to politicize intelligence about Russian interference to delegitimize President Trump's 2016 victory. Next, Uber unveils women preference, meaning features for drivers and riders. This is something that will be in addition for many women who will be soon able to request a female-specific driver. And finally, JFK's grandson rips to name Kennedy Center Theater after Melania Trump. This administration stands for, quote, freedom of oppression. Jack Schlossberg railing against the measure being pushed by House Republicans to rename the Kennedy Center Opera House in honor of First Lady Melania Trump. Regarding the arts, the 32-year-old son of Caroline Kennedy, Schlossberg, saying, quote, Trump uses his awesome powers to suppress free expression and instill fear. The Trump administration stands for freedom of oppression, not expression. And for this one, I'm going to bring back our panel to talk about this. Panel, what do we think? Does Melania not deserve a center to be named after her? Julia, I mean, what is the strife about this? And do the Kennedys have a say on what happens here?
Well, look, I think you have Republicans obviously banding together on this, and you have other initiatives they've put forth, like putting Trump on the $100 bill, or on currency of some such. I think that's part of it. With the Kennedys, look, I think it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, there's a Kennedy serving in the Trump administration right now. It'll be interesting to see what RFK Jr. has to say about it. Jack Schlossberg, it's no surprise to me that he's speaking out against this. He's very much of a unique firebrand on social media.
Who is he?
So he's
other than being somebody's grandson. Has he done anything?
Basically, involve activism, all of that. But he's
famous for being famous.
And he's a personality.
But I mean, Melania's not the all first lady, right? That's a fair argument to say. Why would she be on the Kennedy Center?
If I was step back and not defend the Republican side, it's performance art on both sides, right? I don't think anybody really cares back home. I think it's folks in the building back behind us here who want to sort of, ingratiate themselves to Donald Trump, and then there's Democrats who want to attack Donald Trump, and that's what this is. This is owning the left and owning the right. It's at the end of the day, it's not going to make much of a difference.
I'm torn, Lindsay, because on the one hand, I don't want to take the bait on this because all of this is a distraction from the ridiculous cover-up of the Epstein files and the big, beautiful bills fallout, both of those things. But I will point out that in this country, generally speaking, except for Donald Trump, we do not try to name buildings after ourselves or our spouses while we're in office, usually not when we're alive. I mean, this is a building that was named after JFK after he was assassinated in memorial to him. And we do this. Reagan building was 12 years afterwards.
Kennedy Center. It's just the Opera House, right?
Nonetheless, this is not a thing that we do in America, is aggrandize our politicians while they're in office, because that's the thing you would do in communist Russia, Mick. So maybe we're going to try that out before Mandani gets elected.
And now, why is this riling people up so much?
I think because it plays to a perception of sort of narcissism on President Trump's part, which here is extending to Melania, and we see that play out in ways large and small. I was just reading his local paper down in Palm Beach, which notes that he has declared he has won his 5th golf championship of the year just a few days ago. There's that kind of stuff. There's the idea of, the false Time magazine cover that appears at his golf resorts. These kinds of things, I think, are part. Of course, he declared himself chairman of the Kennedy Center, so So now this is.
Oh, yes. A lot of people were riled up about that panel. Thank you guys so much. What a great conversation.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Yep. Elizabeth Vargas Reports is up next. She'll be bringing you live coverage from Idaho after that astonishing conclusion to the Kohberger trial. That's at 7 p.m. Eastern. The Hill will be right back.
$369 plus text now and we'll include a tube of Instaflex pain cream for fast-acting relief from the pain of arthritis, backaches, and sore muscles absolutely free. Text ARCH to 369-369 today.
NewsNation tonight. Two big guests. One big night on Cuomo.
I have to tell the truth.
The one and only Bill O'Reilly. Plus James Carville joins Chris live. Tonight on Cuomo at 8/7 Central. Only on NewsNation.
Welcome back to The Hill. I'm Lindsay Granger, filling in for Blake Berman. We began the show with President Trump hosting an event where he unveiled the AI Action Plan to help make America the world capital of artificial intelligence. Tonight, outrage is growing over Delta's plans to price more tickets based on what artificial intelligence thinks you will pay. 3 Democratic senators are seeking more information from Delta, citing concerns about pricing practices and data privacy concerns. Arizona Senator Ruben Gallego says, quote, "I won't stand by while Americans are getting ripped off." That is part of the problem, and people are having conversations about it because AI can be a good, bad, or indifferent thing. We all know that there's a lot that we still need to understand. Thank you so much for joining me and watching The Hill tonight on NewsNation. We're back tomorrow at 6 o'clock Eastern. We hope you'll join us there.